Howdy, Ags. Welcome back. It's been nice being on sabbatical for at least a couple months now. But we got to get going because fall ball is going to be here extremely soon. We got just under a month, I believe, before fall camp gets underway. So we got to talk about that preview. And we got so much that we're going to have to do two sections of this. We're going to have to do a offense, and then we're going to have to do a defense. So there's been a lot of talk about the offense recently, especially with the Evan Stewart and Jonte Cook drama that went down. Maybe you know a little bit about it. Kind of rehash that, but that's been a fun time. It's kind of kept us going. The recruiting trail's a little slow, so I'm here to help you out. And let's talk about the offense as in depth as we can. If you like what you hear, like and subscribe, comment. That helps me out as much as possible. It's free. Might as well do it. You can't get anything for free. You can't get a gallon of gas for under $4 almost at this point. So you might as well subscribe. This is the only thing you're going to get that's free right now. So here's what I want to do with the offense. I want to talk about what I think is the three keys to the offense this year. Now, it's not the only keys. It's not all to it. It's not all encompassing, but I think it's the three keys. One, quarterback. Everybody knows this. We've got to decide between Max Johnson, Haynes King, and perhaps Weigman. And this is going to be a big decision. We've got to get our wide receiver situation figured out. But aside from the quarterback position, I think the second most important key that we're going to have to figure out for the upcoming season is going to be the left tackle and the left guard position. So we've got to replace Kenyon Green and Jameer Johnson. So just to kind of recap, who we got, what we're leaving on this offense there. So you've got Kenyon. He left out. He was a first rounder. He went 15 overall. Jameer Johnson, remember, was a transfer in from Tennessee, and we grabbed him last year. He was a nice plug-and-play guy, somebody that brought in, that we could bring in and do a good job, with what we had available. We took some guys that were really good in the 2021 class. You'll remember Wyckoff, Zune, Moko, Strickland, and these guys probably just weren't quite ready to step in there. We also took Fothery and Foster. They stepped in and played. They were ready. They proved that. Maybe there were some doubts over there. We had Kenyon, so obviously he's going to play. They're not going to play over Kenyon. But Jameer was experienced, and rightfully so, he played. So we've got to figure out those two spots. Now remember, we're keeping Bryce Foster. We're keeping Layden Robinson at right guard. And then we're going to keep Fothery at right tackle. Maybe some interesting talk here, depending on left tackle versus right tackle. Will there be any movement versus us coming in with Haynes King or Max Johnson? We got a lefty and a righty. And I need to look this up. Maybe somebody will that's listening. The last time we had a lefty quarterback, I'm not sure, but maybe Fothery would be best suited to be on the left side. I'm not really expecting that, but it's just something we're going to talk about. So let's just assume, though, he's going to stay on the right side. So what we really need to do is we really just need to hash out left guard, left tackle. I think whoever we've got at quarterback, we're going to need to keep them safe. I think both of them are probably going to be able to do a pretty good job with the front runners being probably Max Johnson and Haynes King at the moment. If we can keep them safe, we can block up front. We'll have a chain running, and we could probably have some success. We can get the ball to whatever receivers that we're probably going to have via those two guys. Who are the receivers going to be? We'll talk about that, right? But I just really think these left guard and this left tackle are very important. So, kind of want to do a little bit of, going over this a little bit more, right? Because as we went along in the season, you saw we had a little bit of shifting, plug and play. We had some nagging injuries. Aki played at one point, and then he kind of drifted off, and we didn't see him again. So not sure what happened there. He didn't play in the spring game that I'm aware of. What do we make of that? Give you my thoughts. But the unsolidified offensive line caused problems, in my opinion. We didn't have a cohesive group. And you got to think about this, right? So sometimes you've got maybe Jameer is going to be out and you're going to slide Kenyon to left tackle, which I believe is what we did in the Alabama game, right? So Trainer comes in and he plays left guard. Did a jam-up job playing left guard, right? But you just got to think about this. You don't have the same set of guys out there. You've got some movement. You've got Trainer sometimes playing on the right side when maybe Layden was out for, half a game, quarter, whatever, maybe some things that were going on there. You've got assignments that have to get diagnosed and they have to get picked up, and these are going to be problems. Keep in mind, Kenyon going out, whereas he's a very versatile guy, it doesn't help for him to go from guard to left tackle, right? And I think back to that Arkansas game when we were just getting creamed off the left edge. I think Jameer was playing that game, but that's an area that we really had some fits on last year. So left tackle, left guard, huge decisions that we've got coming up, and there's no better probably way to figure out who's going to be taking that spot than to go over who we've got available. So let me just kind of go down the list of who I think is probably most likely to step in there, or what are the names that could be. So real quick, we've got we just brought in Dewberry from this last class, highly rated 4-star. He was in the class of 2022. He's a 6'4" guy, 315 pounds. He was the number 3 inside offensive lineman in that class, right? He was number 64 overall. But he didn't come in for spring ball. So he stayed in high school. I think he was playing some basketball still, finishing out that with his teammates. So he hasn't had that spring ball work. We don't have a lot of information on him. To me, that's going to probably set him at the back at the moment, or at least, in the middle. Doesn't mean he won't end up starting. My likely scenario, though, for Cam is probably something along the lines of he ends up in the 2 deep. And if we're going to see him play, it's something that transitions through the season where we had an injury or somebody's just not quite performing. He steps up, or he's kind of coming on, and he earns that spot, one way or another, and then maybe solidifies it there. But somebody I've already mentioned, probably maybe a little bit more likely at the left guard spot, and that's Trainer. So his Trainer, 6'7", 330-pound guy. He's a 3-year letterman. In my opinion, again, he's exclusively a guard. I don't see him at left tackle. He had some issues at left tackle whenever he kind of got out there. Some of his movement's not quite there, the quickness not there, maybe some of that agility, right? And so talking about that left tackle spot, we're going to need some get off, some snap, some twitchy folks there to keep those edge guys from going outside, spinning in, and Joe are just going hard edge on us and coming all the way around. There's going to have to be some movement there. He's got decent hands, but you're going to really need to be able to get out in front of that and stay square on that if you really want to be able to block that guy. And these edge guys that were going up in the SEC, very talented. He's shown much more proof that he can really handle the guard spot. He's good with his body. He has good size, and with some limited mobility, it really lends himself to it. He's just got a huge frame. So we'll see. I'm not sure where Jimbo's going to want to take with this guy. I predicted he might be a starter last year. So maybe I'm going to lay off that this year. He seems like at least from comments that Jimbo's made and how he's played him, he might be a little bit more of a mop-up kind of guy. Come in when we need somebody, maybe play somebody that's got a little bit more upside. So moving past those two guys, we've got Zune, Wyckoff, Moko, Strickland. All these guys came in the 2021 class along with Foster and Fothery. We already talked about them. Give you some ideas about who they are. Zune is 6'6", 315. Moko is 6'5", 340. Wyckoff 6'6", 330. And Strickland, a little on the lighter side at 6'4", 295. And all were rated about the same on 247. I kind of put them in order, except for Moko was a little bit more difficult to assess since he was coming from Australia. What makes the most sense here? When we watched the spring game, we saw Moko and Zune playing at left guard and left tackle, respectively, and they were playing with what looked to be the first team offensive line. Layden Robinson was on the right guard. You had Wyckoff at center, filling in for Foster, and then Father on the right side. And so they were going up against the number 1 defense. They had Haynes King at the quarterback. So that's got to be something. That's got that's information where they think they've got him developed. These two guys developed at this point, right? So Moko is at 340. That's a huge number for guard. He looks very capable. He's got good mobility. I don't think he translates to left tackle, though. I think they've got him in the right spot. He's got good mobility, but he might not have quite that range that you want your left tackle to have. He's going to have to get that first step off really quickly, and that probably lends itself to just a slightly lighter person, which makes sense why they had Zune there. So I guess what I'm thinking is if we're going to have guys that are going to continue to come off that left edge, especially if we're going to have Haynes King back there, we're going to have to protect his backside. If Max Johnson's back there, he's going to have a little bit more vision on that left side, so maybe we can get away with a little bit more. I'm thinking right now what we're seeing, if we're thinking about Zoom, is that he's got, let's just talk about what he looks like when he's blocking. So when I'm looking on film and I'm watching him throughout the spring game, what I notice is that his hand placement's really good. He's quick to get his hands out. What you don't see from him is wait until the defender gets in close, and then he's using, say a shoulder, upper arm here, elbow and those kinds of areas to make his first set of contact. So he's bracing it, he's grabbing it, and he's kind of working on in. It's like in a sense a padded situation. So he's getting his hands out there, and he's getting them out there quick so that he can go ahead and get leverage where he wants it and get a feel for where the defender's going to go. I think it serves him really well. You can see whenever the defender goes out wide, he doesn't try. And I wish I could. I almost feel like I should demonstrate this to a degree, right? But he's not trying to overcompensate to get out further wide. He gives me a sense that he knows where his quarterback is supposed to be. So if the defender's going to go way outside, he's okay with letting that guy go out there because he's going to continue to push him outside because he knows his quarterback is going to step up. So just in that, it looked like he had really good communication with his quarterback. When so you can see the same thing whenever the defender went inside. It was very much the same thing. So he was very easily pushing the defender inside, just using the leverage that he was giving to him and working it against the defender. Even when there was a roll move or a swim, it was pretty easily shut down. I don't think anyone really got ahead of him. Now again, he's supposed to be going up against first team defense, so that ought to tell you something that's going on. And who might he be going up against over there? Well, we'll get to that part, but you can be thinking Tunmise. Who else was over there at the time? It's hard for the maroon and white game because you got the guys all split up. So, but you get it. He's pretty quality when it comes to that. I'm going to go ahead and think that we're not going to see Aggie. That's just my gut feeling at this point. Now I'm trying to think of, well, if I was going to be wrong, how would I possibly be wrong, right? So maybe Wyckoff works out better at left guard, I'm thinking. I don't see Wyckoff going out wide. Possibly, we did take a few of the guys in that class. Last year we took Hunter Erb, we took Naboo, we took P.J. Williams. And P.J. Williams was quite highly rated. He's somewhere in the 265 range. So that's why I'm a little bit more reluctant to talk about him for now. I think he's needing a little bit more development, especially size-wise. I mean, Strickland's undersized a little bit at 295, and so Williams at 265. He's just going to need a little bit more. So he probably needs a couple more years of development, getting our training system and strength and conditioning. And then he'll probably be ready to go and projects to definitely be left tackle somewhere along there. Naboo, Hunter Herb is possible. I think Naboo is, he's a 3-star guy, so we're probably looking at the other guys a little more closer at this point. He's a bigger guy. I like his agility a lot. It reminds me of like an Isaiah Rakes kind of guy. Looks big, but then it's like, wow, that guy moves like that. So even almost maybe a Dalen Mack, he's thick like him. Hunter Herb, left tackle, definitely a possibility. Maybe he's a little raw still and could use a year or two of development, and then we'll see where that goes. But right now it seems like we've got quite a quality selection that's going on, one that we haven't had quite a while, which is really good news. But it also makes this choice extremely important, extremely important. So. These two guys we got, I think, that we're leaning towards at the moment, Moko and Zune, feel really good about at this point. But we're going to have to work that out in fall practice still. It's still going to be something that is not set in stone until we get to that first game. So we'll see how things work out. I don't think there's another good way to be wrong at this point. Again, I talked to you about my Cam Dewberry situation, what I thought would be likely to happen with him. I think it's very possible that we're going to see him at some point. The two guys we have playing all over on that left side make a lot of sense right now. So unless they have a slip up, I don't see us getting Cam in until mop-up duty, those kinds of things, or when we need to run a guy in for replacement, something like that. But the future is bright for that area, and we're going to be looking good at left tackle, I think, for a couple of years here. Even Layden Robinson, I think I mentioned, I think he's in his second year Letterman, sophomore, somewhere around there. So he's got this year, I think, one more. And of course, Zune, Foster, and Fothery, they're all going to be either sophomore or 2-year Letterman, or they're going to be redshirt freshmen, something along those lines. So we have lots to choose from. I think you're going to hear this theme kind of moving throughout, because now we need to move on to quarterback, right? This is what most everybody really wants to hear about in large part. I think we're in a really good spot with it, so that's why I wanted to start with linemen, because I just kind of think that lineman area is going to be quite a bit more important. We want to be able to run the ball, and we want to be able to run the ball well. So having a cohesive line like we didn't quite have for the first good 6 games or so, and maybe didn't quite mesh that thing all season like we really wanted it to, is just extremely important. So, of course, those guys are going to have to then work really well with the QB, just like I was talking about with Zune earlier. The awareness, how they kind of speak to each other without speaking to each other and know where each other is going to be a really big deal. So, my official pre-fall projection is going to be left to right: Zune, Moko, Foster, Robinson, and Fothery. Nothing very groundbreaking on the right side, and probably most everybody knows about the left tackle and left guard at this point. I don't think there's a big secret there too. So, quarterback. I don't think anybody's got a good beat on quarterback. I think I've heard everything under the sun at this point. I've even maybe heard that Weigman may be something that people ought to watch out for. He's working with receivers. He's a motivator, and so that's a desirable trait. Why not give him a look? He looked pretty decent in the fall game. Let me just pull up their stats real quick, which I thought was fairly eye-opening. Haynes King went 11 for 33, and 133 yards. He did throw 2 INTs. He ran 3 times for 42 yards and got 1 TD. That was rushing. Max Johnson, he went 13 of 31 passing for 127 yards. So they're almost dead even. Max has got a slightly higher completion percentage. He threw 2 TDs. He did throw 1 INT. So Haynes King had no passing TDs. He did have the 1 rushing TD. Max had 2 passing TDs, 1 INT to Haynes King's 2. And then Max also had 8 rushes for 91 yards. Okay, so I didn't quite think Max had that many rushing yards. That was pretty surprising. And then the 2 TDs were a little, like, I was like, really, when did those happen? I didn't even quite get it. Haynes King, 2 INTs so far. So based off of the stats, where would you be leaning? You think about that and let's talk. Let me find Weigman's real quick. It's around here somewhere. I want to say it was something that was, like, wow, really? Weigman threw for that? You wouldn't think he would have thrown for what he did, but he did. And so I'll find it in a little bit, but it was something similar. It was something like maybe 7 of 11 for 97 yards, something along those lines. I think he had one TD. So I wouldn't put the guy out of the discussion. It's just difficult to think, he can step in and hit the ground running. We're going to have to play Miami pretty quick out of the gate, and we've got to have somebody that is ready to go. I'm not wanting to fool around with getting somebody ready for Miami. I want the first 2 games to be Sam Houston and Appalachian State, and I want to see all cylinders firing. So I want these guys to be ready to go. And taking 2 games to train somebody up to get ready for the 3rd game, to me, it's not working at this point. We need to be ready to go, because that's reminiscent for me of the Sumlin era, and I'm done with that. So that leads me to believe that if the same sentiments are in line with what I've got, we're looking at either Max Johnson or Haynes King. So where do you think we go from there? What's that going to look? Yeah, it's a really, really great question. So I gave you the stats that probably, based off the spring game, is going to give Max is going to have just a slight edge at this point based off of stats. Haynes King, he played last year. He won the spot, so he's our kind of de facto number 1. Max is coming in with nearly an entire season of experience with LSU. Maybe that bumps him up again past Haynes King because of that. So it's hard to say. Here's what I see from them, or maybe this is what I want to see out of. Let's start with Haynes King. What I want to see out of him before I'm feeling more comfortable. And I think back to the Kent State game. His kryptonite, in my opinion, were passes right around the 10, 12, 15-yard mark. He was just a little bit errant, right? And we saw these interceptions happening, and we're thinking Kent State here. We're like, I'm ready to go out and trounce these guys. And by the score, we did. But if you watch the game, it felt like a struggle. It felt like we were getting to 3rd down converting instead of, like just blowing them out of the water on 1st and 2nd down. And that's what I want to see. That's what we need to be ready to do. In the spring game, I would have to say he looked better. I think the accuracy has gotten better. I'd like to see a little bit more, but once we get to there and I see those passes coming down, I'm gonna feel pretty good. But I'm still a little skeptical. I'll be honest. I just feel a little uneasy about it at the moment. And I think he's very capable, and I think he's a guy that can be successful, and that likely would have some success. Would he have done better than Calzada last year if he played full year? Yeah, I think he would have, absolutely. Calzada had some great moments though, so can you reproduce those kinds of moments? Maybe not each one of them, but in different ways possibly you can. And I think he's got that in him. When I'm watching Max play though, I'm seeing something from Max I just have not seen and I can't really remember, and for sure not last year. Last year was difficult. There were definitely times when you felt like it's like you're sitting in the dentist chair, right? I mean, this is, you know, I don't know, 1880s all over again, and you've got a bad tooth and you need to go have it pulled. It was just very difficult watching Calzada move around in the pocket. Max is not that way. He is the polar opposite of that. He can sense where the blitz is coming from. He feels it without feeling it. It's like he can sense their breath coming from the left side and he's moving to the right. He has no problem stepping up either. I don't know if the dude has taken a big shot and he hasn't become gun shy yet or what the deal is, but he seems like he may have balls of steel. I will just have to see, because the way he stepped up in the pocket, and I know quarterbacks are protected in the spring game, but he just gives off that sense that he wants to be in the pocket. Like he doesn't want to get out of the pocket and he wants to stay in. And I think to a degree we're going to have our linemen playing up because of that, because that's kind of what he expects. And then oddly enough, the guy moves and runs better than I ever anticipated he was going to do. He's got a little head bob that leaves defenders scratching their head. I mean, what's going on? Where did that even come from? I don't quite get it. I don't know if he's got a little Joe Burrow in him or something, but whatever. And if he does, all the more power to him. We'll take it, because that guy's amazing. Something about his running ability too kind of ties in with that whole awareness thing. It's like he kind of can sense, where he needs to kind of make his move and where not to make his move. So he gives me an idea that he's a very football savvy guy, and I think we could really, really use that right now, and just the experience that he's going to bring to the table. For me, if you told me we're going Max Johnson tomorrow and he's our starter, I'd feel pretty good about it. I'd feel real good about it. If you told me Haynes King, I'd be like, okay, I'm good with that too. I'm good with that. I think we have a really good quarterback situation to go that we're coming into as well. So very pleased about that. The cream still has to rise to the top in both of these key situations, because in the end, what we have got to do is we have got to get the ball down the field. We have got to be better at 10 to 20-yard passes, and the occasional, and hopefully it's not occasional moving forward, that we're going to get more shots down the field. Probably the biggest knock I have for Max Johnson was in the spring game. He tended to be a little errant. You could see it. He'd throw behind the receiver a little bit. And so we may be walking to a little bit of an accuracy situation there too. But then again, you've got the last play of the LSU game versus us, and he throws a dime. So how do you diagnose that? What is he going to do? Is he this guy, or is he this guy? Is he accurate or is he not accurate? Maybe that's his thing. Maybe we're gonna have to deal with him where he's going to be a little bit inaccurate at times, right? Maybe we've got us a Trevor Knight on our hands. So not the best passer, but a motivator. A guy that's gung ho, a guy that's smart, knows what he's doing, and it's going to give 110%. And if that's what we've got, I'm all for that. I remember back to Trevor. Bring us back in that Arkansas game, right? And didn't he? Hopefully memory served me correctly, but in that overtime game against Tennessee, wow, some amazing games to have that guy a part of. So I think Max Johnson's probably somewhere between a Trevor Knight and a Joe Burrow. LSU people, if they were ever listening to this, would probably like, don't ever compare him to Joe Burrow, this and that. Just calm down, okay? And put the EAUX on that however you want to, and take that and put it in your pipe. Just give it a rest, because I'm not trying to say he's Joe Burrow, but the idea is that he's got some characteristics that are very reminiscent of that. So that doesn't mean he's going to just take us to a championship or something and give us the same kind of production, but you get the idea. He's got some pocket presence and awareness and stuff that we're looking for, and that they had the same. So who's going to be throwing to? If it's going to be Haynes King, Max Johnson, or is Weekman going to sneak up there and take the job? Who is it going to be throwing to? So we got about, 3-4 spots, depending on how you want to look at this. There's been some recent controversy about wide receivers and what they do. And this was the thing with Evan Stewart, right? He was getting teased about all the blocking that he was going to be doing in Jimbo's system, right? So I took to Twitter on this one and made sure that those who were teasing us about this knew that we had 2 receivers over 500 yards receiving last year. I should say receivers, but I'm going to get into the receiving yards to be kind of more technical. 2 guys who had over 500 yards receiving. Texas had only one, Worthy, 981 yards. And so then we proceed to have 7 guys that had over 200 yards, and 9 guys, I think, and Texas had 7 or something like that. So it was obviously that we had kind of the clear advantage. We didn't have the upper echelon number 1 type of guy, but this is what he was getting teased for, because he's going to be coming over to block. But we had all these guys with these receiving yards still. So it wasn't quite as a disparity as one might have thought. They had 2,700 yards passing. We have 2,500 yards passing, give or take 20 yards on each of those. So you get the idea. It's not quite the powerhouse passing, and we're not quite in the doghouse passing as you might think and have been led to believe. So don't believe all this stuff. And if you need more good stuff like that, follow me on Twitter, ATM Cold Chills. But lots of good stuff on there. That kind of gets to the point about, well, are we going to have that number 1? So Anias is a number 1 in the sense of he's the leader, he's the go-to guy, but he's not the number 1 and the guy that's going to go downfield and that's going to go up for the 50-50 ball. That's not Anias. He's the slot guy, he's the slippery guy, he's the multi-tool. So he's the one that we're going to use to kind of leverage and create mismatches, because he can go in the backfield, he can go out the slot, he can go out wide. They'll do what they need to do with him to get the mismatch. Where we want the mismatch, though, is we want the mismatch likely to be with Evan Stewart. I think Evan Stewart is going to be a clear starter. Let's just put it that way. Wide receiver 1, 2, 3, I don't know. Just call Anias number 1, and then let's go with Evan Stewart number 2. I've wondered if we're going to see any Chris Marshall, which we took in this last class with Evan Stewart. He's not on campus yet. Evan played in the spring game, looked pretty good. We targeted him a lot. So that's also another reason why I'm thinking he's at least number 2 at this point. So we're getting him in hot and heavy. But Chris Marshall's probably not somebody we're going to have starting day 1 just yet. So who do we have available? We have Chase Lane, we have Preston, we have Price. I think we still have Hezekiah Jones and Chapman. Chapman transferred out. You knew about that. If you didn't, sorry to be breaking the news to you now. Same thing with Demas. Both of them have moved on to greener pastures. And I feel like, I'm forgetting Moose Muhammad. So we got Moose and Yulkeith as well, guys who saw some playing time last year and maybe looking to get something more this year. So if I'm going to put some things out there, I'm thinking this. I'm thinking Anias number 1 as usual, but likely I'm going to put it out there that Evan Stewart's going to be number 2. And I would like to probably see, I really think something like this happens where we're going to end up with pains me to say it to a degree, maybe Chase Lane or Preston back for wide receiver number 3, and then we're going to transition into somebody else. That could be Moose, that could be a Chris Marshall, it could be Yul Keith. It's going to depend. So that third one's really hard for me to nail down at this point. But it's not as hard to nail down as tight end is probably going to be. So this is the other wide receiver. So one of our 500-yard receivers, not really a receiver, right, but tight end, but still they're getting classified as receiving yards, was Weidermeyer, right? So we've got to replace Weidermeyer. Replacing Weidermeyer of last year, not as big a deal. Replacing the Weidermeyer of 2 years ago, bigger deal. And this is where I'm kind of going to put myself out there a little bit and try and, say this is where I might be wrong. And if I were going to be wrong, I think it has something to do. Will have something to do with Anais. We had issues. If you looked closely last year, we had issues. Whereas Anais made a bunch of good plays, made a bunch of good catches. You can't expect the guy to be perfect. There were some things that weren't ability driven. There were missed assignments between him and Weidermeyer, and that resulted in negative plays, and negative plays are killers. So that's something that needs to be remedied. I believe it will be remedied because this is Anais' money year. If Anais is going to do something, it's got to be this year. He should be on top of his game. If you don't see him on top of his game, first game out, man, that's a red flag for me. That's a big red flag for me. And I say this not to be. I love this guy, right? But there's truth in constructive criticism, and this is that. This is the loving criticism that all players need to hear. And if we're hearing it, I'm not here to blow smoke and do all that stuff with this, because I don't want to set you up for thinking something different. Now, I don't have I don't have the best opinion and the perfect opinion on all this, so you can take it for what it is. But there are some issues that have had gone on there. Now, if those don't get worked out, maybe we end up getting one of these guys worked in here. So it depends on him. It absolutely does. What we're looking at tight end, though, we're going to have somebody new. Weidermeyer should have known quite a bit more and been ready for quite a bit more last year. We saw the fall and the drop, and I think that's probably why. So what we may end up working with is somebody working into Anais' spot. And here's what we've got for Weidermeyer. We've got Garza. We have I believe Blake Smith. We just picked up Jake Johnson. We have Donovan Green that we got in this last class as well, and I believe Ostrom. So we've got and don't let me forget Max Wright, because he's had some playing time, and this guy's he's a veteran and he wants to play, so he's got motivation. Who's he going to be? It's going to be a combination of who can block well and who's going to be doing catching and running their routes in the correct way. So we saw quite a few drops and frustrations from Weidermeyer, and somebody's going to have to step up and do that. We saw missed assignments last year and blocking schemes. Those are going to have to be remedied as well. Whoever does those two things the best, and it seems too simple to be saying it, to be quite honest, is going to be our starter. But it's going to have more to do with up here and who's in the film room than it is going to have to do with these hands. I guarantee you. And if it doesn't have something to do with that, or have more to do with that, we're going to be in a little bit of trouble in that spot. So in the let me see if I can pull up the spring game stats again for you, because we did get some yardage out of these tight ends. So Garza was 1 for 13. Blake Smith was 2 for 24, and he had the touchdown catch, right? Max was 1 for 7. So we have some guys that can play. Of course, Donovan Green wasn't on campus, and Jake didn't record any stats in this game. So that just kind of is what it is. So who are we going to go with? This, to me, is the biggest question mark there is, just because we don't have a lot. You heard the stats versus like what we heard from some of the wide receivers, and I'll read you those off real quick too. So Evan Stewart was 7 for 75. Preston was 3 for 70 with 1 TD. Brown was 4 for 60 with 1 TD. Moose was 5 for 52. Price 3 for 32. So you see we're working in quite a few guys. Anais did a bulk of the rushing for us that game, right, with a chain being out. Chase Lane did record one catch for 4 yards, so he's still there. But we don't know what Ostrom's going to look like yet. We don't know what Donovan Green really looks like yet. Jake didn't record a stat that I saw, so we got some question marks there too. So at this point, probably lends itself to being Garza or Smith at this point. I mean, why wouldn't it? Who knows what we're doing better? Can somebody else work their way in? Absolutely. It's probably not that difficult to pick up some of the schemes, especially somebody coming in that's motivated and wants to get in the film room. Who that wants to be could take the bull by the horns and make something of themselves and make a splash. But I really don't know who to go with on this one. So fall camp is going to be crucial in deciding this spot. And maybe it's two guys. Maybe we want to go double tights a little bit more. You can rest assured we're going to have a two deep. So who they decide to put there and the second person in line is going to be pretty crucial. All right, I still have not found that Weigman stat yet. It's got to be around here somewhere. So he was running mostly with the third team, coming in for I think either, was it Haynes on his side? But he looked very serviceable. The last thing we're going to have to figure out, really, it's not really something to figure out. I mean, we know a chain's going to be starting. Question about a chain is whether or not he's got the size, right, to be 3 downs. We're probably going to see at least one other person. Who's that person going to be? Last I heard, LJ is a little bit banged up. Not sure where he's sitting at. Supposed to be pretty good for fall camp. That's good news. He's somewhere in this, I think, 215 range. And I think a chain's a little bit over 200 as well. He's a little heavier than you might think. Amari Daniels looked really good in the spring game, though. He looked like he is running the same system that Spiller and a Chain have been doing for the last 2 years, and he looked like he was ready to step in and do that. I mean, very patient runner, looking for holes, running behind his blockers, knows when to make cuts. It was difficult to know exactly what the blocking would look like, which is a major part of being a running back. But he looked like he had all the same knowledge and ability that we've seen out of the last two guys. So I think he's ready to step up and be that number 2 for sure. Now, he's not a big guy either. So are we looking for a big guy? I mean, we have who played quite a bit. I think it was Crownover that played quite a bit in this game, and got a lot of work. And he did. He ran. He had 11 carries for 34 yards, 1 TD, and one reception for 18. Amari had 16 carries for 128 yards. So obviously they have some faith in that guy. I think we're definitely looking at either him or, Crownover is extremely serviceable as well. Will LJ play in front of Crownover this next year? Maybe he will. We'll have to see. The injury's going to set him back just a little bit, but it is what it is. Finally found Weigman's stat. He went 7 of 19 for 116 yards and 1 TD. So he is right there with the other guys. I mean, that's all almost exactly the same, just a little bit under. He didn't have quite as many attempts as the other one, so he only had 2/3 of the same attempts. And then he had half the completions, but nearly the same yards. So he's up there for completions. Had, what would that be? About 12 incompletions, 7 completions. So that might sound a little problematic, but he still managed 116 yards out of it. So who's going to be there? I think that kind of still stands. I think one of the other guys is probably leader over Weigman. And what we're looking at between those two guys is I don't know. We'll see who the guys, the rest of the players rally around. The wide receivers will probably tell you. I'm a big proponent of when you throw a ball and you see these guys catching it and or dropping it, and whoever they're catching it and dropping it for, I don't think they're doing it conscientiously. I think it's subconscious. But, sometimes they just have a habit of catching for certain guys more so than they do for others. And that tells me a lot. So will they do that? I've heard Max is quite the motivator. So that's love. I love hearing that kind of news. So we'll see what that wants to be and how that's going to work out before fall gets here. What else? That's offense. That was a lot. I think I don't know if I can talk more. Defense is going to take another long talk to be able to get it worked out. So if you thought this was drinking from a fire hose and we got a lot going on tonight, it's going to be big time when the defense gets here, because we replaced, I think, we got about 61% of our production coming back next year, 62 on offense, and 60 on defense. So, we lost 40% of the defense last year that we're going to have to replace. It's actually going to be maybe an even more exciting conversation to have based off of who we've got that came in there. But it's a lot. It's a lot of turnover, and we're going to have to figure out who's going to go in what spot and what to kind of look for. So I am looking forward to it. So again, glad to be back. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. If you haven't yet already, go see. I put a hype video on. I'm calling this kind of the redemption season, because I just don't think we achieved like we wanted to last year, or like we could have achieved last year. So I think we're out for redemption. I'm not big into revenge, so that's why also I'm kind of going with redemption. But check that out. And other than that, give me about a week and we'll be back here doing the defense, and then we will do special teams and the line along with it probably. Then I will do a season preview and prediction. So we're ramping up here. We're just about 53 days away. Thankfully, baseball got us much more through the summer than we thought they were ever going to do. So props to them. Loved every minute of Omaha baseball. Program is looking, I'm so ecstatic about it, to be quite honest. I love playoff baseball. It's almost one of my favorite things in the world. So anyways, good to be back. Good to see you. We'll see you next week, and thanks and gig 'em.